Okay, so today the Arts Commission Committee for Antiracism and Equity and Metro Arts staff are joining by conference call. In a moment, we will call roll of all members present. This meeting is being recorded and will be made available to the public no later than 48 hours after the meeting. Any action items decided by consensus at today's meeting will be reconfirmed at the next in-person meeting of the committee. So I will go ahead and call the meeting to order. And as I'm taking roll call, we will bring up the CARE group norms on the screen as well. Thank you, Grace. So for each committee member, I will ask you your name, or I will state your name and ask if you're present. And then I will also need you to answer verbally. So, John Royal.
Present.
Thank you. Megan?
Present.
Thank you. Ms. Bounce?
Present.
Thank you. Terry?
Present.
Will? Thank you. It sounds like you're Mickey Mouse again. I will now call for a motion that the meeting agenda constitutes essential business of this body, and meeting electronically is necessary to protect the health, safety, and welfare of Tennesseans considering the COVID-19 outbreak, and is permitted under the Governor's Executive Order number 65. We will need someone to propose a motion to this effect.
This is Terry. I propose that.
Thank you, Terry. And then I will need a second.
This is Megan. I second it.
Thank you, Megan. If anyone has comments on this motion, please. Thank you. I think we had Megan first. So we had Terry and Megan. If anyone has any comments on this motion, please raise your hand or come forward. Okay, I will need to do a roll call vote. And every committee member present must vote, even those who mentioned, and you must say your name and your vote. So, John?
John Royal, yes.
Megan?
Megan Kelly, yes.
Ms. Bounce? Okay, I'll come back to her. Terry?
Terry McCormick, yes.
Yes. Will? We're going to say that was a yes for you. Ms. Bounce? Well, I don't know that the motion actually passes with votes, but I will, it is, okay, thank you, Grace. The motion passes. So I will now pass the meeting to Janine to facilitate our information session.
And just really quickly, Paula, it looks like Ellen is an attendee, so she is here. And Dontry, would you get a chance if you wouldn't mind upgrading her?
Thank you, Grace. Hi, Ellen.
Hey, Ellen. Hi, everyone. Actually, I wanted to just offer up to the group to postpone the informational session again to the next meeting, since we do have quite a bit of rich discussion and important topics to discuss kind of closer to the end of the agenda. But happy to bring this up at the next meeting if that is okay with the group. So we'd just love feedback from the group at this time.
This is John Royal. I'm all right with that.
Okay,
This is
great.
Terry. I'm all right with that as well.
Okay, excellent. So thank you all for that. And with that, I will pass back to Paula, and we will return to these really important topics at the next meeting.
Thank you, Janine. Okay, so I will ask that you review the agenda, which you see here on Grace's screen. Are there any points of discussion that you would like to facilitate? And then also, are there points of discussion not listed on the agenda that you would like us to add?
I don't know if I should necessarily be the person to facilitate them, but I know I added a couple of things to the agenda this time, and I'm happy to kind of tee them up for discussion. And that would be the public comment policies, term limits, update to the Arts Commission. And those are kind of administrative and things to be brought up and either discussed or sort of assigned to a working group or go to another meeting. So I'm happy to start those.
Thank you, Grace.
I can lead the, I guess, just kind of the update on the working group assignments. Kind of just looking at the Excel sheet again, and then if anyone wants to add anywhere, we can do that now.
Okay, thank you, Trey.
And I have all the information for the Porch Crossroads update, so I'll present that.
Okay. So that leaves the discussion of the 360 review as well as the communications plan that needs a facilitator.
And also just as a side note, Aaron is here as an attendee as well, so he should be joining us momentarily.
Thank you. Hi, Aaron. Okay, so maybe we'll leave the discussion of both the 360 review and communications plan open, and we'll just discuss as a body, if that's okay. Okay, Trey, you're up.
Thank you. Dontra, do you mind if I share my screen? Thank you. All right, can everyone see? Or thumbs up if you can. Okay, cool. Thank you. So we do have a few people who have gone in and signed in for specific work groups that they'd like to contribute to. And I guess I really wanted to just kind of discuss on, sorry, I heard loud noises. I really wanted to discuss kind of the meeting organization and kind of how these work groups will organize and kind of figure out a way that we can kind of start to at least have people convene and kind of join in that way regularly. I know it's starting to be a lot. So also thinking about, you know, how regularly are these groups meeting? That way we can kind of balance the workload of everyone. So yeah, if anyone has any thoughts on, you know, how often each work group might meet and kind of if that's the right way to go about the work groups having kind of check-in meetings, or is it kind of assigning specific tasks? But yeah, I really just wanted to kind of open up the discussion and If anyone would like me to specifically add them to the spreadsheet right now, I can go ahead and do that.
Sorry,
Yeah,
and just
go ahead.
Oh, sorry, John. I did not mean to cut you off. I was just going to ask Dontry if you wouldn't mind upgrading Aaron. Oh, there you go. Thank you. Sorry. Please go ahead, John.
No sweat. I just wanted to say that I think it's dependent upon the work, but I think that a bi-weekly check-in would work. That's just my, and I feel like as work intensifies, as specific tasks are assigned, that work can happen, and a lot of things can happen via email and other correspondence. But I think that a check-in every 2 weeks is good. It's just my thinking. That I'm looking specifically at the internal analysis and development group. So that's my 2 cents.
Okay. Aaron, Megan, Tara, do you guys feel like that works? Just to start with, or and I guess another question that I have is kind of staff involvement. How involved do you want us to be, especially in kind of those meetings, and kind of how can we set the standard of if you are reviewing certain things that maybe it's best staff were to get kind of an update on after you had a chance to review the details, we could kind of make sure we set those in place as well.
This is Terry. I think the frequency that John has mentioned is fine. To your question of staff involvement, I'm not sure we can answer that at the outset. So if staff can be fluid enough to be there to help shepherd us through the or walk with us through the process and building the process, and then if we feel like there is a point of contention that needs to be addressed by staff stepping to the side.
Okay.
If that works, if that's okay, then
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, we can start it out that way.
Yeah, and this is Sarah, and I would just kind of echo what Terry said in terms of staff involvement. I think it would depend on the working group in particular. So I'm just looking at the one that I self-selected to be on training. And, for that, I would just kind of want to know baseline, like what's going on around training in general. And so just getting kind of staff information just generally for all of these kinds of areas, but we also already have a lot of that information already because of the reports you all have already made. So I think just being flexible and figuring out, playing it by ear and seeing when we need to pull you all in and vice versa. Or when you all feel like you need to kind of let us know something in each of these spaces too. Like it's a both ways conversation.
Definitely. Thank you, Sarah.
This is Aaron. And John, I understand your need or your desire maybe to meet every 2 weeks, but between this meeting and caucusing and art meetings and subcommittee meetings, I'm starting to feel a little overwhelmed by the frequency of all of that. And so I would wonder if there'd be other ways to kind of consolidate that and do some communication and just be sure that, maybe we can do some prep work before the meeting to maybe lessen that frequency a little bit, unless there are times where we need to meet biweekly or a little more frequently or something. I'm open, but that's just kind of my thought on that.
So I guess would a good compromise just be to kind of say email communication and kind of touch base regularly to meet when necessary.
This is
instead of go ahead.
This is John. Aaron, I hear that, and if that is if that's how you're feeling, I absolutely understand. So, you know, Trey, to your point, if that's what we need to do, then that's fine.
Could there maybe be, I guess, at least a monthly check-in kind of in between C.A.R.E meetings? You know, maybe it's just a 30-minute meeting that's set aside. That way, just in case anything slips through the cracks, we at least are kind of checking in on those things. And then, you know, we're not taking a huge chunk of time to actually use that to work on things during that time.
Yeah, for sure. I would definitely be up for meeting once a month. And then if we need to meet more frequently than that, maybe we can kind of figure out what works best when that's needed. But for sure, I would support meeting once a month, definitely.
Trey, may I pose something to the group? I'd love to get feedback on, this suggestion. So I think meeting monthly just to keep up the work is a really great idea. And maybe because there is so much, I feel like there's a lot of front-loaded work, like, setting goals and everything. I wonder if early in the year, maybe there can be, and maybe this is too much because I know we're all reaching capacity, but like a retreat day where we focus on work group and organization and kind of really churn through some of these issues, because I feel like any of these topics that we're going to discuss in tonight's meeting like could be its own separate meeting, truly, like there's like a lot of nuance and a lot of detail, but I just wanted to throw that out there specifically for the work groups. But I think that we can continue with the work and keep up with it with the monthly meeting.
Yeah, Janine, this is Sarah. So some of us met last week to kind of go through these work groups, and that was something that came up in our conversation, was doing some kind of retreat if possible. One, to help us build team life, but also to help us really kind of see the priorities, figure out, how we want to go about things, and just really start to move things forward. And so, yeah, I'm like, I think especially if it's going to be on Zoom, maybe like a half a day or something, just a couple of hours, maybe a little bit longer than our regular meeting. But yeah, I'm for that too. And then like kind of doing shorter meetings just to touch base for every working group, and they can base that on like availability for each person that's on those work groups.
Definitely, that's a great idea. Janine, do you think that maybe that's something that we do in January, and kind of wait until then to kind of specifically, make these decisions? So kind of pause this for now. Or...
Maybe. I think that might be. Okay. I think that might be. Yeah, I think January, like when we have a little more space, might be good. We'll get through what we can this month, of course, but I think January would be a good time. At least I'm optimistic.
If I can just sort of lob one thing in there, and this is a priority specific thing. Just so y'all know, we are going to be getting 3 new commissioners. We have one that I think is being officially confirmed December 15th, and then are expecting 2 more in January. So I know that having sort of an anti-racist and equity onboarding component for our board members was something that this committee was really interested in. So I just wanted to kind of put that out there, since it is coming up rather quickly, if y'all wanted to try and work with modifying the training for those 3 new individuals.
Grace, thank you very much for sharing that. I heard December the 15th. When are the other 2 commissioners coming on?
We don't know. It's still in process. So the process is that the mayor's office, like we make recommendations, but the mayor's office will choose those commissioners. 2 we don't know yet. And then once we have that, that gets confirmed by council, and then we sort of onboard them into the process. So Paula and Will can also probably speak to that. Generally, our side of the training is at the moment more, this is Metro Arts, this is what we do, these are the laws you're subject to now. It does include, I believe, discussion of our equity statement, but certainly could be expanded. And then I know at some point there's an HR training that covers Metro's basic policies in terms of equity as well as other things. That goes in cycles. So for example, we got a new commissioner in January, but she hasn't been able to take her Metro training. So that's kind of more of a revolving door. So I would say the immediate initial training mostly comes through Metro. Sorry, that was more information than you asked for.
No, thank you. It's very helpful. Thank you very much.
Yeah, sorry, I did close the Excel to kind of just kind of move on from the work group and kind of pause that until next meeting, or until we do that kind of focused discussion. So unless anyone has any, go ahead.
Oh, no, please finish what you're saying.
Oh, no, yeah, unless anyone else has any specific, questions around work groups that need to be addressed today, we can move on from that.
I've got two quick things. One is, so it sounds like we're going to do a half day, maybe retreat on a Saturday. Would that work for everybody? Just do a Saturday, maybe 9 to 12, or I hate 8 o'clock meetings, but we can make it an early meeting or afternoon, but just, break it into chunks. Would that be a meeting for everybody to attend and go through all the work groups together? Is that what I'm understanding?
I believe so. Yeah.
And then how does C.A.R.E want the commissioners to engage in this process? Not just the half-day meeting, but then the retreat, but then also within the work groups.
I guess that's something that we need to discuss. I guess we have to figure out kind of how to bring the work from the work group, and I guess I don't know if that kind of gets into the 360 review, or and I don't know if that's kind of what you're wondering, but yeah, I guess working within these work groups, kind of figuring out what is the end product of the work group and how is that shared forward to commission, and kind of, I guess, with your support and Will's support, almost, kind of speaking on behalf of the work, you've seen the work happen, and kind of verifying that the findings and recommendations, throughout the work would be, in the best interest of the commission. And I guess that's a kind of macro thought, but I guess in a more specific way of kind of defining the roles, I guess those are kind of to be determined, hopefully through those discussions. That's just kind of my thoughts.
So this is Terry. To make sure I understand kind of what we're asking and answering here, for the retreat, I would think everyone in the room, that everyone should be in the room, or, quote unquote, which means that would need to be publicly noticed. Is that correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. Does anybody have a problem with that? Okay, I think that's good and fine. And so at that point, we can kind of discuss commissioners and subcommittee, subgroup life attachment. But it's kind of like what we've been doing anyway. So I don't see that as being an impediment or anything that's going to take a lot of effort.
Awesome. Thank you, Terry.
Mhm.
So I guess, go ahead.
Oh, I just also, and this is again something that can be discussed at the retreat as well. But I also just want to express that, like, in terms of like the staff flexibility, just to make sure everybody knows that, like, it's not just like, you know, Trey, Janine, and I are like the only staff people you have access to. I know there's been discussions like, oh, we want to talk about this, and so we want to talk to the staff people involved. And I know staff is really open to that. And so if you ever want to talk to anybody else as well or bring them into the conversation, that is an open door.
Awesome. Well, I guess I can kind of take the lead on kind of finding a day. I'll work with Grace and try to start planning the retreat. And yeah, so we will update you guys on that. And I think that does it for the working groups on our agenda.
Awesome. Thank you, Trey. We'll look forward to your email on the date.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right, Grace, I believe you're up next.
Yes. And do we want the PowerPoint back?
Will it aid in discussion?
No.
Yeah, I'm hearing it. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
Okay. There we go. Yeah, so just in order of what's listed, I just wanted to circle back after last meeting's discussion of public comment policies, and sort of narrow things down to how C.A.R.E would like to handle like the in-committee public comment. So the default currently is when we publicly notice the meeting, we offer, people can email the arts@nashville.gov if they have any particular public comments for this committee. If there ever were any, I would bring that to y'all's attention, read them verbatim, and they could be discussed. But I did want to check in, because I know that's an important point for this committee, sort of on a number of levels. The form, so in addition to email, would it be preferable to also have a call-in procedure so that people could call into this meeting during a set time? And that kind of leads into the function. The default is that people call in on specific agenda items. So for example, with the commission, we're reviewing the guidelines. If someone wants to make a comment about the guidelines, they can call in. But given the nature of this committee, I didn't know if y'all would prefer to sort of leave that space open if there was a concern or somebody wanted to make a comment to this committee or about the general work of this committee, and not sort of limit it by agenda item. And then also sort of when it goes out into the world, in terms of like the event notices, what y'all would like to emphasize and make sure is being communicated. And that can be a discussion that we have now. It could be, you know, part of a working group, or we could send it to another meeting. But I just wanted to make sure that conversation was in progress at some point.
Sorry, Grace, are you waiting on me?
Oh, no, you're great, Dante.
Okay, my audio did something weird, and I just seen everybody just silently waiting, and I was just making sure it wasn't me.
I think
Grace,
it's
how
a,
much
it's a
effort?
thinking.
Go ahead, Grace. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say it was like a thinking silence.
How much effort would go into setting up a phone line so people could call in if they chose to?
So it is a little bit more effort, particularly in this virtual world. And I don't know, we would have to go down, I believe, to the Metro office building where they have like a call-in set up. I would have to check with IT about whether these hours would be all right. I don't know if they have staff in the building at this point. But if it was of interest, I mean, it's certainly something we could make work or try to put the pieces together.
Yeah, I like the idea of having something like that as an option. And I think I would want to leave it as open as possible, whether that's about agenda items or if they want to, if somebody from the community wants to bring a different topic to us, with the understanding that maybe we wouldn't, be able to have a lengthy discussion or decision if there is one required at that time. But ideally, I like the idea of having that be as open as possible so that people can bring their comments and concerns to the group as they need to.
This is Terry. I would agree that it should be open, and I was answering a message, so I missed part of what you said, Grace, a part of the setup. So let me try to reiterate. We have the option of either a block of time to comment or comment per agenda item. We have the option of phone communication. And did you say that, do we have option of other communication like email or anything other than telephonically?
Yes. So what we do currently is we sort of direct people to email the arts@nashville.gov if they have a public comment. And so if we received something to that effect, the process would be I would then read that verbatim into the meeting. Yeah. So people could. Currently, they can email if they would like, or we could do email plus phone.
Okay, so thank you. What I'm thinking is, I like the idea of a single block of time because for two reasons. A, we're publishing the agenda so they can view that. We publish past meeting minutes and recording, or at least the recording, so they can review that. I want to make sure that the group can get the work done. So I'm a little leery of per agenda item commenting because that can extend a meeting. But I think the magic is how we disseminate information more broadly, which we can discuss in our retreat, is how do we, now that we've made a decision on how we're going to do it and deploy it, let's talk about the messaging. What is it we want folks to know? So that's my 2 cents.
I think that makes a lot of sense. So in advance of the retreat, I'm happy to explore the possibility or how we would make it work to have a call-in procedure. And then maybe I could bring that back at our January meeting and we could look towards implementing it in February, if that works for everyone.
see what you come back with, Grace, from IT, because if we have to have somebody, if you have to be there physically, we might need to start our meeting at 4:30 to 5 or something like that, and do that for the, the block of time in the beginning, just so that we have that option. So just come back to us to let us know kind of what's available and what parameters we might have to shift to make that work for us.
I would also be curious if there would be a way for that block of time for people to submit comments if the meeting later at 5 after hours when IT wouldn't be there, if the comments could be done beforehand with the public knowing that comments would be closed by a certain time, and then could play those or have space, have somebody speak them or whatever we needed to actually for the material in the actual meeting.
I believe it is possible for people to pre-record messages. I know the Planning Commission was trying it for a while, but I can also research into that so that there's a phone option outside meeting time as well.
All right, fantastic. So Grace, thank you for that. And then I guess you want to go ahead and keep going with term limits?
Sure thing. Sorry, y'all, I'm doing a lot of talking tonight. So I just wanted to bring this up because it's a particularly good time of year for the discussion. Our commissioners generally roll over in January. Our other committees generally roll over in January. And term limits was something we had discussed way back a couple centuries ago in March when we were looking at the guidelines. And it's something that is generally written in for committees just as sort of like a stopgap so that not everybody rolls off at once, or, that institutional knowledge is retained too, because there are several years of work that's sort of culminated in this committee. So I just wanted to bring that up sort of as 'tis the season and see where y'all were at with that. And if you wanted to sort of, generally we do them in 1, 2, and 3 year increments. I checked the guidelines, term limits or max terms was not written in, so conceivably rolling over could continue to happen. But I just wanted to re-bring that up and see how the committee would like to handle that or discuss it.
Thank you. This is John. I'd like to speak to that. I think one of the things that you addressed is the fact that there's been a lot of work that's gone into this. And I feel like being on the ground floor, developing an analysis, a collective analysis, and working through things really takes time. We've informally talked about a process by which to bring community members into the work. And then then when people do roll over on the committees, on this committee particularly, with this anti-racism work, to step in with that shared analysis. But I really think that work is key to stepping into this. And so I feel like, there needs to be a structure that allows for the training that it takes to get up to develop the necessarily critical analysis to do anti-racism work, both in your personal life and wherein this work regards the committee. So that's my feeling on that.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
I agree, John.
there. I think we could probably get deeper into this in the working groups, but I think in thinking of that, I think we do have like there are elements in place to get that like. So what we're really talking about is term limits / succession planning and like kind of keeping the information flowing. And I'm thinking, I mean, we're in a transition time. It seems so, but there are things that are building. So, for example, the relaunch of racial equity in arts leadership with the C.A.R.E Center seems like it could be a potential training ground for community members, to develop to have a deep development of that racial equity analysis. Additionally, I know it's brand new, hasn't even started yet, still in development, but the collaboration with the Porch, kind of taking the Crossroads training, extending it out for 6 weeks after the initial training also seems like if these things are ongoing, those could be places. So I think just again, as we continue this conversation, let's think about the mechanisms to connect everything, basically to connect all these pieces that are in our racial equity workspace, but just not in exactly within C.A.R.E yet. That's just what I want to say.
Megan, I think you had unmuted to say something.
Going to unmute to talk about that, kind of reiterating John's point about finding ways to bring people in. And I think that that's probably part of the conversation we'll do when we're talking about work groups, when we're talking about training coming in. I think that can fill that conversation as well as talking specifically about commissioners. I also think that to kind of answer the question directly about term limits, that I think that is also worth us kind of discussing and looking at, just in the sense of actually having impetus to really focus on bringing people who are dedicated and trained within the work into it, and also just to kind of be mindful about where we all are, Kitty. So I'm echoing that. I think that John's part is what he said is really, really valuable to it. But I do think that we also need to consider long run how we make the work sustainable, and so we're not burning anybody out either.
Grace, it looks like Jonathan Marks is an attendee.
Oh, thank you for noticing that.
Yeah, and thank you, Megan, for that. I think that that's really good. We do need to kind of put some systems in place. But I'm worried about, I feel like for the work that's going to need to be done, that you guys are kind of the foundational members that really kind of helps guide like how this committee operates. So I would hope that, we could stay together for, I don't know, at least 2 years, 2.5 years before we really start to say, okay, let's bring in, we can bring in more members, but I would think that you guys are kind of that foundation to getting this done. That's my 2 cents.
I think some of that will come down to timing. Grace, I think you mentioned maybe staggering when those rollovers happen. And I think the bulk of the committee has been together from the beginning of the art team, with the exception of, I think Jonathan and I started a year after everybody else. And so I think that the question of timing becomes important when kind of everybody except the 2 of us started all at the same time. And I know that we've become a new entity when we kind of formed the C.A.R.E committee. But what, kind of how do we approach that as we think about the term limits too?
Sorry I'm late, y'all. I think thinking about issues of capacity is feeling very present for me right now, just because I'm feeling a little sort of stretched with work stuff. But I like the discussion that's happening, and part of my thinking, to your point, Paula, is that if we think about the to do as a body, maybe there is room to bring other folks that if we feel like we need more capacity to do the work, and that we can work together as a team to think about, what criteria we want to have. That would be one thing. But I do like your point, which is we need continuity right now, and that, the folks who've been part of this process for as long as they have, and that we have an opportunity to make sure that we're really continuing to build the framework and the foundation that's going to make this work be lasting and transformational. So I think it's a really valuable point.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Real quickly, I think we have a call-in attendee. Dontry, would you mind unmuting them? Would call-in user 615-300 let us know who you are?
This is Will Cheek.
Oh, I'm sorry, Will. I thought you were somebody who wanted to listen. You are now unmuted if you would like to contribute.
Okay, yeah, I just called in because for some reason WebEx doesn't like our system.
Will, do you have any thoughts on term limits?
I think the discussion of term limits should be tabled. I think we should return to that maybe this time next year after we've actually moved forward as a group. We're so new and this is complex. And if we were going to do it, I would suggest doing terms that were longer. Instead of staggering 1, 2, and 3 years, let's do 3, 4, and 5 so that nobody's rolling off in a year.
Okay, thank you for that. Anybody else on term limits?
I have a question just to clear up my confusion. My understanding of term limits is that they would all be the same, either 3, 4, or 5 years, or whatever the number is that we pick. Not that they would be different for different people. Am I just not understanding how that works?
So generally what we've done in the past is give people different term limits. So it's like, for example, this committee, if y'all all started with one number, your terms would all be up at one time. And so the staggering has come just so that when we ask somebody, would you like to stay, would you not like to stay, there's not the opportunity for it all to be like, yes, we're all leaving all at the same time. I do bring it up though, because I feel like in some ways, as it's been sort of brought up in this conversation, this committee is a bit different. Particularly in terms of succession, it wouldn't necessarily be one person rolls off, somebody's nominated to replace them, because there would need to, it seems, and this makes sense to me, there would need to be sort of perhaps some overlap, or somebody coming in to be part of the committee, and it wouldn't necessarily be sort of like a direct succession, if I'm making my point clear. So
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, what I was going to say is generally we do it in different years for different people, but honestly, it is up to each committee how they would like to do it. And so whatever makes sense for this particular process, which is arguably different than our other committees, that can be sort of formed in whatever way works best.
So I think we recognize that it is important, but we don't necessarily know exactly what it's going to look like for us going forward. So maybe this is something, as we've talked about before, like reviewing things every 6 weeks, like our meeting schedule, our agenda and all that, every 6 months, I'm sorry. So maybe we put this on, on the agenda for midpoint next year, and then just kind of keep going with it, Just like I think in March, we need to discuss the flow of our meetings and whether or not this is working for everybody. Because I think that gives us like the 6 month space. I believe it is. Okay, thank you, Grace, for that. So up next, we have the discussion of the 360 review and then the communications plan. In interest of time, I was going to ask if we can do the communications plan during our retreat, because Terry, I think you brought it up about kind of figuring it out, and maybe that is the best place for us to park that item.
Agreed.
All right, thank you. So the 360 review of Metro Arts, I know that there were some documents that were, or no, that was something different, sorry. What, anybody have thoughts on what this is going to look like?
Well, this was mentioned by Grace in our last meeting. So we don't really know in prizes.
Well, yeah, and just to start the discussion from where we kind of left off last time, so and kind of thinking about it between that discussion and this one, I kind of wondered if maybe, this is something that we could develop over this year of 2021. I know from staff side, I think there is a lot of initial engagement work. So like, for example, looking at the grant guidelines and doing that initial sort of review and engagement. And then, maybe as this year passes, sort of seeing those different points where, C.A.R.E could help the work of Metro Arts grow, could help us kind of figure out an idea of just sort of an annual review of Metro Arts and, the progress. And I particularly use 360 review. It's a term I learned from Janine. And I just like the idea of it being sort of a review from multiple perspectives of sort of how Metro Arts is progressing. It is certainly an amorphous idea and is open to consideration, and maybe it's also something to discuss at the retreat. But I think I was kind of conceiving of it as a way, I'll pass it to you, Janine, just conceiving it as a way to sort of ground the myriad things that C.A.R.E is sort of getting involved in. And so every year we kind of have a place to come back to of like, okay, we looked at this for Metro Arts and made these recommendations. What happened? But Janine, also, since you were my inspiration in this, I would love your perspective.
Yeah, absolutely. So, I mean, I think at the retreat, we can gather some information about, various ways that 360 reviews happen. I can certainly share my very positive experience with them of just like kind of uncovering, blind spots in, just my work, how I approach my work. This was at a different organization. So, I mean, I brought it up at different staff meetings that I thought it was a good idea. And I think just, C.A.R.E is kind of uniquely situated. And I think because, of Metro Arts commitment, via our mission and our equity statement of, stating multiple times, racial equity as a priority, and C.A.R.E.'s, C.A.R.E. is comprised of staff and commissioners and community members working together. I mean, I think, again, this is unique. And then, and when we can, be a body that initiates the type of analysis that includes, again, like all the various views, like up, down, side, so we have, bringing in voices of artists and staff, other community members who are impacted in our work, various other, departments, just all the touch points that we have, and having this annual summary, and I think of course, like the first time as we build this and what does it look like specifically for Metro Arts and with C.A.R.E., that's going to take some time, but I think, it could be, I think it has the potential to really, change things significantly, and foundationally. So that's just, those are my thoughts that I've brought up.
So, excuse me, would it be fair to describe what I'm hearing is it's an annual review of the progress and challenges of Metro Arts through the lens of the C.A.R.E. group. And would it perhaps also be a source of strategic planning for the year coming up? Okay.
Yes.
I just want to say that loud.
Yeah. Well, and forgive me for not initially mentioning it. You had brought that up last time, Terry, and I think that was a really insightful clarification to make, because I think, the hope would be that it would also help and sort of forward looking and forward growth. So thank you for bringing that up again.
You're welcome. And just let me press a little bit on this. I'm not just suggesting that we're making recommendations, but strategically planning is a formalization of those recommendations, and including an ethic to be followed, and process management to be followed. So a little bit more than just making recommendations, but formalizing those recommendations to which they would need to go to the commission. So, okay, thank you.
I think that sounds excellent.
Staff, do any of you know when we're up for another strategic plan?
This year?
2021?
2021.
2021.
Late spring, probably summer.
Okay, thank you.
And I will admit, I have not been through a strategic planning year. So Janine or Trey, or Paula or Will, I don't know if y'all want to speak to maybe ways in which this committee could be involved in that as well. I don't know exactly what the process is or how that functions, but maybe that's something that we could sort of keep on the horizon.
Yeah, when I started at Metro Arts, we were just at the tail end of the planning especially for the public art investment plan, which was probably the closest. And by that time we were kind of on the branding, but I do know there were a number of consultants who were involved. But I can kind of definitely poke around and figure out more about that process, at least for the public art community investment plan, which we've been working off of the past few years.
it may be a good idea to maybe do a 360 review pre-strategic planning process, so these results can be included in the strategy plan, as opposed to doing it after and then saying, oh, but, change it.
Yes, I think that's a good idea.
I completely agree with that.
So
Yeah, I do too.
Good, excellent. Janine, if you can find out exactly when that process gets started, from Caroline, what she's thinking, and then let us know in January so we can back out a couple of months and kind of start that process.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I would imagine things are probably a little delayed. Just to give you the overall cycle, I have not been part of a Metro Arts strategic planning year, but I believe they're kind of on a 5-year cycle, so 5 or 6 years. So 2015 was the last one, and so kind of 2020, 2021 is the next one. That's the plan. I do know that there, is a RFP draft in place, but because of the freeze that happened in the past month, the previous month, that was all frozen. So yeah, I'll definitely get the update and we'll report back as soon as I can, and definitely by next month.
I'm so sorry, Janine. What's an RFP?
Oh, I'm sorry. A request for proposals. So that's like the written out, kind of like a job description that we would send to that goes through procurement, and then we ask for this this specialized consultant to assist with this process.
Trey, as you do your research, because if I remember correctly, the last strategic plan was under Jen. If you find copies of that, could you make those available to C.A.R.E? Because I think using that as a benchmark to base our first 360 on might be good information.
Okay, yeah, absolutely. I can go and try and find that. I know some of those public art plan stuff, some of those documents are listed on our website, so I can send links to those plans. But I can, as far as the Metro Arts strategic plan, I can go back and try and find some information about that.
I remember seeing it on the site at some point in the past. So it'll be up there.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Okay, so we'll definitely have this back on the agenda for January. And then we'll move the communications plan to our retreat. And then we have, I guess, Grace, you're back on again for an Arts Commission update?
Yeah, so it's I just wanted to have some space to check in with y'all to make sure you felt comfortable with the process or clear on the process for if you ever wanted to bring something to commission, and kind of doing a review of processes on my end. I mean, for like the Grants and Funding Committee and the Public Art Committee, it's kind of an automatic process of generally something, goes to committee for discussion and then they recommend it to the commission. So it's sort of like just happens in a progression. And since this committee just functions differently, I just wanted to make sure that there was space for clarification on that process, which isn't necessarily a process. It's basically the committee just saying they want to take something to commission, or if there was any questions or discussion that needed to happen around that. That's mostly it. Just December's kind of an admin month. And so in thinking about that, I just wanted to make sure that that was all good here.
Yeah, this is Aaron. I don't have a lot of questions around that right at this moment. I think once, once we kind of get into our work groups and start kind of working through some of that, we might have a little bit more need for that and maybe a little more understanding about how that works. But right now, I don't feel like I have anything that I need to kind of push up to.
Okay, Grace, well, thank you for bringing that forth. Janine, do you want to touch on the Porch and Crossroads anti-racism program?
Yes, absolutely. And I just, apologies for my delay in sending this. I was just waiting on a lot of details. I sent a copy to everyone on our committee just now. And let me just get to, do I have the ability to share my screen, Grace?
So Dantri,
It's
do you
not.
mind making Janine the presenter? And as soon as that happens,
Actually, no.
Janine, you should.
It's okay. I can just, everyone has this. So, either way. Oh, I can share now. I'll do it. I just didn't want it to be a thing. Okay, so Google Chrome. There we go. Okay. So here are, you should have received a copy of this in your inbox just now. And I just want to touch on a couple of like the major points of this. So it is a kind of a collaboration between the Porch and Metro Arts, as you know. We're starting off the training with the Crossroads, kind of the Saturday school, so like a one-day Crossroads facilitated course that on a Saturday, and then it'll be followed by 6 consecutive Mondays. It's a 2-hour workshop that begins with, like a 10-minute, maybe 10 to 15-minute mini module. And these mini modules follow the curriculum that is presented in the Crossroads Introduction to Anti-Racism workshop. And so we are thinking that there's going to be 24, up to 24 participants, and hopefully 24 participants that will all gather together. Then we're going to do 3 breakout sessions after that. So we'll meet together for the module, 3 breakout sessions that will be co-facilitated by a porch writing instructor and a racial equity specialist. And so there'll be, co-facilitators, thought partners. The bulk of the work will happen during that time, although there will be reading involved. Not every, depending on the week, different student submissions will happen. Sometimes it's a writing, improv writing. Probably the first couple weeks it'll just be within the class. Other times there will be kind of submitted works that will be read, and feedback will be given during the session. There is a planning session that we are building into this. So in regards to stipend, it's going to be based on, so the instructors, everyone will be paid the same. So right now it's approximately $870. That's $60 an hour plus $150 reading stipend for the instructor. Hopefully we'll get scholarships. That's still to be determined. The scope of the work, again, for the racial equity instructors would be presentation of 2 mini modules, so broken up between, ideally there would be 3 writing instructors, 3 racial equity specialists. So each of the racial equity specialists would take on 2 topics to present these mini modules, and then again, reading of submitted student work, acting as a thought partner with the writing instructor, attendance of the planning session, and then also virtual, of course, all of this is virtual attendance of the 6 Monday sessions. And then again, guidance and feedback to the students. I believe we have February 6th confirmed. We do have February 6th confirmed with Crossroads. The planning session is still TBD, depending on everybody's. Hopefully that'll just be like a doodle poll, and so we really can get everyone. And then the writing sessions will take place on Mondays from February 8th through the 15th of March. And there's still, so again, the rest of the document just outlines kind of the Crossroads training, basically. And so once we have everybody in place, the Porch has confirmed as of this week, they do have their instructors in place. We hope to, confirm our racial equity specialists in the next couple weeks, so of course sometime in December, so we can all get together for the planning session in January to confirm things. This is certainly a pilot. This is going to be a learning year, but we're very excited about it. And yeah, that's about it. I'm going to stop my share because I think that's it. And you have everything else. So that is my update. Any questions though, or I'd love your insight on it. You have now the text. Again, apologies that this was, just emailed to you today, but happy to receive email feedback or feedback right now or questions. Also, you can, always just let me know, schedule some time with me if you need to speak. All right, so that's it for me though.
We're all waving, Janine. It's okay.
I know. She was very happy about her advent calendar little toy today. So.
Oh, good. Good. Thank you for sharing that. And once you get titles and all that good stuff and specifics, will you email it out to us so we can also share?
Yes. So Emily is working on our communications of it. I think we do have the title, which is included there, which is Power of the Pen, Anti-Racism Through Writing. So that's the working title as of right now.
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions for Janine or comments?
I think this looks wonderful, Janine. Thank you.
Okay, thank you all.
So before we wrap up, I just want to kind of offer one quick thing. I feel like our agenda items are so packed with information, and it's a lot of staff reporting out. And I feel that once we start really getting into the working groups and having more information to come, we're not going to be able to contain our meeting to an hour and a half. So I am going to just offer this for everybody to kind of mull over and decide to have maybe staff provide like a monthly brief to the committee via email, kind of like we do for the commissioners where we have that board brief, but it just kind of gives everything. And so then that way, when we come together, it's not just, all the information kind of coming to us at one time. We kind of have some time to kind of look at it, review it. And then once we come to the our committee meetings, we're able to maybe discuss it in a little bit more detail. And I think that way we can shorten our agenda a little bit more and then add the working groups in and kind of make it, just give space for the working groups, because I don't see how we do that otherwise. That's my 2 cents.
This is Megan. I'm with you all. I think that would be a great idea.
Yeah,
Yes,
this is.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, this is Sarah, and I agree. I think having that stuff in advance, then we can actually have discussions and have enough time for discussions in our meeting. So, yeah, I'm down.
Okay, thank you.
This is Ellen. I agree too.
Yeah, Jonathan agreed to strongly.
This is Terry. I agree as well.
This is Will. I agree too.
This is Aaron. I say likewise.
I think once we have, our retreat and kind of organize a work group, it'll be easy also for us as staff to kind of, figure out a way to organize that information and populate that report. So yeah, I think that's very doable.
I think we need some type of just a briefing. It doesn't have to be an 8-page thing, but just kind of even the notes that you guys would have shared with us today. Just give it to us via email and we can read it and review it. And then that way we can have, I know our discussions will be much richer if we're able to do that. Okay. Any other additional topics of discussion that anybody wants to bring up?
I had spoken briefly with Ellen about the White Arts Administrators Accountability Group and sort of how the future of that is forming and how C.A.R.E could be involved in that process. I think that might be a working group or discuss at retreat sort of thing. But I did want to offer it into the conversation if anyone is interested in discussing that or going into further detail. I do think it's important, as has been brought up by this committee, that y'all are sort of involved in this process. So I just wanted to offer that up, however y'all would like to proceed in being involved there. And realize it's kind of vague. I can also go into detail, but I know we're reaching our time. So if we wanted to push it to another meeting, or if there were interested parties that would want to meet to discuss it outside, I'm not quite sure how to proceed, but the intent and the willingness and the invitation is there.
But Grace, I think, this is Ellen, I think we should also have C.A.R.E members involved in the one for arts administrators of color as well.
Oh, absolutely, and certainly needs support for that.
Should this then be an agenda item for our retreat, or is there a more urgent need to discuss it in depth? When is the next meeting?
I think
for either of them.
There's one coming right up. But I think we talked about January, February, and March maybe, right?
Yeah, and I can email you all the details, but just so you know the basic structure, we've kind of had our sort of initial tester sessions, two of which are on tomorrow. One will be, the second one will be facilitated by Amy Smith. And then in January, kind of having a session to reconvene, see where people are, re-examine the priorities and the norms. From our perspective, though this was kind of started in partnership with ABC, we're hoping that it can be sort of a collaboratively led group. So it's not necessarily a program put on by Metro Arts like Real, and that we can sort of be a consistent holder of space. But I think that still means there needs to be some discussions and some thoughtfulness about what that means and what that entails and what accountability looks like. And I'd spoken with Ellen in her role as sort of the executive director of Global. We're sort of offering or reaching out in partnership with other organizations to lead the content and the discussion. And so that's something where Ellen could sort of step in, both from the global perspective and from the C.A.R.E perspective. But I think we're still sort of feeling out how that goes forward and what that means. And so it bears further detailed discussion.
So is it possible, do we know enough so far of both groups to provide a profile of each with any pertinent goals or points, major points of discussion and major points of contention or discomfort for either one, and put that in a hard copy form and drop it into our SharePoint site.
Yeah, I can do. I mean, just to be honest, Megan was there with me. We had an initial meeting with a small group of us, but I can certainly provide the summary notes that I have from that meeting.
I think that would be very helpful. Yeah.
I think for the white affinity or what WAG, which is a weird name, but everybody's on such different levels. I mean, that's what I noticed on the 2 meetings, is that people are so differently experienced in even what the term equity means and their personal experiences, their organizations. So for that group, which is much larger, I'm sure, we almost have to kind of take an assessment of where people are and at what comfort level they are, and even discussing it, I think, in discussing issues, because not everybody's even ready for that.
Yeah, and that's a great place to start.
So I think reaching out to all the members of what was the art team, we can kind of talk about who would be available to help pitch in with these things and what a plan of action would be from our end, and then present it to C.A.R.E and see if that's what you think we should be doing. If the whole committee thinks that's the way we should approach it. I mean, to me, that would be the easiest thing to do, to be able to get going on it right away for January, for the new year.
That makes sense to me, and I'm happy to sort of send a follow-up report with more of the details, if that would help sort of clarify any discussions y'all might have.
Grace, thanks for being the one to follow up with them on that. Okay, so we do need to be mindful of time. We have 2 minutes. Our next meeting, if we're sticking with the first Wednesday of the month, that would be January the 6th. Has anybody heard whether or not the governor is going to extend his executive order?
Unfortunately, not currently. We have until December 27th. And that is as far as we know.
It seems highly unlikely that we will be meeting in person in December. And I for one, am not ready. As much as I would love to be in the same room with y'all and miss that interpersonal contact, let's be honest here. Sorry.
You're speaking the truth. Absolutely. Jonathan.
Oh, don't be sorry.
Yeah, absolutely. We're all probably feeling the same way. So I guess if we can, if the first Wednesday of the month works, then we should just go ahead and plan for January 6th at 5 p.m. And then Trey, you'll let us know, maybe send us a couple of dates for possible retreats, dates and times, so that we can get the most attendance.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anything else that we need to discuss? Okay, well, happy holidays, everyone, and seeing no further business of this committee, this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays, everyone.
Thank
Happy
you.
holidays.
Y'all be well.
You too. Bye-bye. Thank you.